Muhammad Ali sat behind his mahogany desk, surrounded by photographs of his greatest victories. The rumble in the jungle, the thrilla in Manila, his Olympic gold medal from Rome. But on this particular afternoon in 1973, the heavyweight champion of the world was about to face a challenge unlike any he'd encountered in the ring. Bruce Lee walked into Ali's Los Angeles office like a coiled spring. Every movement was controlled, precise, dangerous. At 5 feet 7 inches and 135 pounds, he looked almost comically small compared to Ali's 6 feet 3 inches, 220-pound frame. But there was something in Lee's eyes that made Ali sit up straighter in his chair. Something that made the champion's instincts whisper a warning. "Mr. Ali," Lee said, his voice calm, but carrying an edge like a freshly sharpened blade. "I've come to ask you something." Ali leaned back, that famous smile playing across his lips. He'd heard every question imaginable. Reporters, fans, challengers, they all wanted something from Muhammad Ali. But this was different. This wasn't some boxing reporter or another heavyweight hoping for a title shot. This was Bruce Lee, the man who was revolutionizing martial arts and becoming a global phenomenon in his own right. "Go ahead, little brother," Ali said, his tone friendly, but with that underlying confidence that had made him the most famous athlete on the planet. "Ask me anything." Bruce Lee didn't smile. He stepped closer to the desk, his movements so fluid they seemed almost supernatural. When he spoke, his words cut through the air like a knife through silk. "Could you beat me in a real fight?" The office went silent. Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, who'd been standing by the window, actually took a step forward. Drew Bundini Brown, Ali's longtime cornerman, stopped mid-sentence in his conversation. Even the sounds from the Los Angeles street below seemed to fade away. Ali's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. He'd been asked if he could beat Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, every heavyweight who'd ever laced up gloves. But this was different. This was a 135-pound martial artist asking if the heavyweight champion of the world could beat him. "You serious?" Ali finally asked, leaning forward on his desk. "I'm always serious about fighting," Lee replied. For the next 10 minutes, Muhammad Ali, the man known as the Louisville Lip, the fighter who never stopped talking, who'd predicted the round he'd knock out opponents, who'd composed poetry about his victories, sat completely silent. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand what happened in that office, you need to understand how these two legends came to meet in the first place. It was early 1973, and Muhammad Ali was at a crossroads. After 3.5 years of exile from boxing for refusing to be drafted into the Vietnam War, he'd fought his way back to prominence. He'd lost to Joe Frazier in 1971 in what many called the fight of the century. He'd won some, lost some, but at 31 years old, he was hungrier than ever to reclaim the heavyweight championship. Bruce Lee, meanwhile, was exploding into the American consciousness. His television show, The Green Hornet, had introduced him to Western audiences, but it was his martial arts philosophy and his role in developing Jeet Kune Do, his own fighting system, that was captivating martial artists worldwide. He was filming Enter the Dragon, the movie that would make him an international superstar, though tragically, he wouldn't live to see its success. The meeting had been arranged by a mutual friend, screenwriter Sterling Silliphant, who trained with Bruce and was fascinated by both men's approaches to combat. Silliphant had planted a seed in Bruce's mind. What would happen if you fought Ali? It wasn't just idle speculation. Bruce Lee had been vocal about his belief that traditional boxing, while effective, was limited. He'd studied Ali's fights obsessively, breaking down his footwork, his jab, his ability to move despite his size. Lee had filled notebooks with observations about Ali's fighting style. "Ali is extraordinary," Lee had told Silliphant. "His speed, his distance control, his psychological warfare. He's a genius in the ring." But boxing rules protect boxers from the full reality of combat. When Silliphant arranged the meeting, ostensibly to discuss a potential film project, both fighters agreed. But everyone who knew them understood the real reason. These were two of the greatest fighters in the world, and they needed to know who was better. Ali's office on Wilshire Boulevard was more than just a workspace. It was a shrine to his accomplishments and a stage for his personality. The walls were covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and memorabilia from his career. There's the famous photo of him standing over Sonny Liston, his Olympic gold medal under glass, letters from world leaders and celebrities. Bruce Lee entered wearing simple clothes, dark pants, and a casual shirt. No flashy jewelry, no designer labels. He carried himself with the kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. Ali, by contrast, was dressed in a sharp suit, his presence filling the room even when he was sitting still. The initial pleasantries were brief. Both men understood they weren't here for small talk. "You see my fights?" Ali asked. "Every single one I could find," Lee replied. "I've studied your footwork, your hand speed, your ability to control distance. You're remarkable." Ali nodded, accepting the compliment as his due. "And I've seen you move. On TV, in that Green Hornet show. You're fast. Real fast. Probably faster than anyone I've fought." "Probably." Lee's eyebrow raised slightly. "Definitely." Ali corrected with a grin. "But speed ain't everything, little brother. I've fought fast men before. I've fought strong men. I've fought mean men. I'm still here." "That's because you fought them under boxing rules," Lee said, his voice neutral, stating a fact rather than making an accusation. "Gloves. Rounds. No kicks. No grappling below the waist. Boxing is a sport. I'm talking about a real fight." That's when the atmosphere in the room shifted. Angelo Dundee stepped closer, his trainer's instincts on alert. Bundini Brown stopped moving entirely. This wasn't trash talk before a scheduled fight. This was something else. Something more fundamental. Ali stood up, all 6 feet 3 inches of him. He walked around the desk, and the size difference was striking. Bruce Lee looked up at the champion without any visible concern. "You think you could beat me?" Ali asked, his tone not mocking, but genuinely curious. "I think it would depend on the rules," Lee said. "In a boxing match, under boxing rules, you destroy me. Your size, your power, your experience in that specific format. I'd have no chance. But in a real fight with no rules." He paused. "I believe I could win." That's when Ali asked the question that would echo through martial arts and boxing circles for decades to come. "How? How could you possibly beat me? I'm twice your size. I've got reach, power, speed. I'm the heavyweight champion of the world. How would you do it?" And then Bruce Lee answered, and Muhammad Ali fell silent. Bruce Lee didn't immediately respond. He walked to an open space in the office, away from the desk and furniture. He gestured for Ali to follow. "May I demonstrate?" Ali nodded, intrigued despite himself. He moved into the open space, his boxer's instincts taking over, his weight balanced, ready for anything. "In boxing," Lee began, "you're trained to attack and defend within a specific range. Your weapons are your fists. Your targets are above the waist. Your movement is primarily linear, forward and back, side to side, but always on your feet." He moved as he spoke, his body flowing like water. "You're a master of that range, of those weapons, of that type of movement. But watch what happens when I change the range." What happened next lasted perhaps 15 seconds, but everyone in that room would remember it for the rest of their lives. Bruce Lee didn't punch. He didn't kick Ali's head or body. Instead, he moved to Ali's side with impossible speed and dropped low, his hand shooting toward Ali's knee. He stopped an inch before contact, his fingers positioned in what martial artists call a phoenix eye fist, a strike designed to attack specific pressure points and vulnerable areas. "Your knee," Lee said, his hand hovering at the point where he could have struck. In boxing, no one attacks your knees. But your knee joint, like anyone's, can only bend one way. A strike here, with the right force and angle, would compromise your mobility. You can't box if you can't move. He shifted position before Ali could react, now behind the champion. "You're back. In boxing, you clinch, the referee breaks you up. But in a real fight," his hand moved toward the back of Ali's neck, again stopping just before contact. "There are pressure points here that can disorient, can compromise your ability to defend yourself." Lee moved again, this time dropping even lower, his positioning suggesting a takedown. "And if I take you to the ground, something that never happens in boxing, your size advantage diminishes. Your punching power, which comes from your ability to generate force through your legs and torso while upright, becomes limited. Meanwhile, I can attack joints, can use leverage, can target vulnerable areas that boxing rules protect. He stood up, stepping back, returning to a neutral position. You asked how I could beat you. That's how. By changing the game. By not fighting the fight you've trained your entire life to win. Muhammad Ali stood there, his usual rapid-fire commentary completely absent. His eyes, which typically sparkled with confidence and humor, were thoughtful, analytical. He was processing what he'd just experienced, what he'd just learned. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Angelo Dundee later said it was the longest he'd ever seen Ali go without talking during a conversation about fighting. Bunini Brown would recall that the champion's face went through several expressions: surprise, resistance, consideration, and finally, something like respect. When Ali finally spoke, his voice had changed. The playful arrogance was gone, replaced by the tone of one fighter recognizing another's truth. Show me more. For the next 2 hours, Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali engaged in a conversation that went far deeper than that initial demonstration. Lee explained his philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist, and how it was built on the idea that fighting wasn't about styles or systems, but about adapting to the reality of each situation. Boxing is beautiful, Lee explained. It's refined, efficient, powerful within its context, but still a context. It has rules, and those rules shape how you fight. I've studied boxing. I've incorporated elements of it into my own approach. Your footwork, your jab, your ability to control distance. These are universal fighting principles. But I've also studied wrestling, judo, fencing, and street fighting. Because a real fight doesn't come with rules. Ali listened, really listened, in a way that surprised everyone who knew him. He asked questions. He wanted to know about kicks, about fighting on the ground, about how to defend against weapons. He was doing what he'd always done. He was learning, adapting, looking for any edge that could make him better. In the ring, Ali said at one point, "I know exactly what my opponent can and can't do. No kicks above the waist. No elbows. No strikes to the back of the head. I've trained my whole life to excel within those boundaries. But what you're telling me is that those boundaries are artificial." "Not artificial," Lee corrected. "Necessary for the sport. Boxing without rules would be too dangerous, too brutal. The rules make it a test of specific skills. But those skills aren't the same as the skills needed to survive a real fight." He paused, then added, "You're one of the greatest boxers who ever lived. Probably the greatest. Your speed, your intelligence, your heart, these are exceptional. But if we fought for real, without rules, I'd target everything boxing has trained you not to defend against. Your knees, your eyes, your throat. I'd take you down where your boxing expertise becomes less relevant. I'd turn it into a different kind of fight." Ali nodded slowly. "And size? My size doesn't matter." "It matters," Lee said. "Of course it matters. Size, strength, reach, these are real advantages. If you grab me, if you hit me clean, I'd be in serious trouble. Your power is real." But he held up a finger. "Size becomes less important when I can attack targets that size doesn't protect. A knee joint fails the same way whether it belongs to a 135-pound man or a 220-pound man. Pressure points work the same. And on the ground, technique can overcome size if the size advantage doesn't come with grappling expertise." "Prove it," Ali said suddenly. "Not on me. I believe you. But show me something that demonstrates what you're talking about." Bruce Lee smiled. It was the first time he'd smiled since entering the office. "Do you have a heavy bag?" 20 minutes later, they were in a gym on the ground floor of the building. Ali's personal heavy bag, which had absorbed countless hours of the champion's legendary hand speed and power, hung from a chain in the center of the room. "Hit it," Lee said to Ali. "Show me your power." Ali didn't need to be asked twice. He moved to the bag, his feet finding their rhythm instantly. Then he let loose. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. The bag swung wildly, the chain rattling with each impact. The sound of Ali's gloves hitting the leather was like thunder. He finished with a combination that sent the bag swinging in a wide arc. "Now watch," Lee said. What happened next became part of martial arts legend. Bruce Lee approached the bag, positioned himself, and unleashed a side kick for what looked like an impossible distance. His body became a whip, all of his weight and force channeling through his leg and into the bag. The bag didn't swing. It flew backward, the chain going horizontal. There was a crack as the chain took the full force of the kick. The bag swung back, and Lee hit it again with a punch. Not a big, looping boxer's punch, but a short, direct strike that seemed to have minimal windup but maximum impact. Different tools for different purposes, Lee explained. Your punches are optimized for the boxing context: power, accuracy, speed within that specific range and angle. My kicks give me range and power that punches can't match. And my strikes are designed to generate maximum force from minimal distance, which is useful in close quarters or in street fights where you don't have room for big movements. Ollie watched with the intensity he usually reserved for studying film of his opponents. His mind was cataloging everything, filing away details that might prove useful. "You really think you'd beat me?" Ollie said. It wasn't a question anymore. It was him working through the logic, testing it against his own experience. "Under the right circumstances, yes," Lee said. "But I want to be clear about something, Mr. Ollie. This isn't about disrespecting what you do. You're a master of your craft. What you've achieved in boxing is extraordinary. What I'm saying is that mastery in one domain doesn't automatically translate to mastery in all domains. You're the best boxer in the world. But if the rules changed, if the game changed, we'd both be operating in unfamiliar territory. The difference is, I've trained for unfamiliar territory. I've trained to adapt to any situation, any opponent, any context." They returned to Ali's office, both men sweating slightly from the exertion and the intensity of the conversation. Ali sat back down behind his desk, but his demeanor had changed. The performative confidence, the need to be the center of attention, it had dimmed. In its place was something more thoughtful, more genuine. "Let me ask you something," Ali said. "You've obviously thought about this. About fighting me, specifically. Why?" Bruce Lee leaned forward. "Because you represent something. You're not just a fighter. You're a symbol. You stood up to the government. You sacrificed your career for your beliefs. You're proud, powerful, and you've never backed down from anyone or anything. In many ways, you embody the warrior spirit that I try to cultivate in myself and my students." But he paused. That same confidence can become a limitation. When you know you're the best at something, when you've proven it over and over, it becomes hard to imagine that there might be challenges you're not prepared for. "You're saying I'm overconfident. I'm saying your confidence is justified within your domain. But every domain has boundaries. Boxing has rules that define what's possible and what's not. Those rules have shaped your training, your strategy, your instincts. If the rules change suddenly, can you adapt?" Ollie was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Could you teach me? Not to fight like you. I'm a boxer, and that's what I am. But to understand what you understand. To see the weaknesses in what I do." This was the moment that revealed Muhammad Ali's true genius. He wasn't threatened by Lee's demonstration. He wasn't defensive or dismissive. Instead, he recognized an opportunity to learn, to grow, to become better. Bruce Lee nodded. "I'd be honored. But understand, it's not about learning specific techniques. It's about changing how you think about fighting. It's about seeing the assumptions you make and questioning them." Over the next several weeks, Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali met several more times. Lee taught Ali about kicks, about fighting on the ground, about attacking and defending vulnerable targets that boxing doesn't address. Ali, in turn, shared his deep understanding of timing, distance control, and psychological warfare, areas where he was the undisputed master. Their sessions were private, witnessed only by a few trusted friends. Angelo Dundee was skeptical at first, worried that this unorthodox training might mess with Ali's boxing instincts. But he quickly realized that Lee wasn't trying to turn Ali into a martial artist. He was expanding Ali's understanding of combat. "What Bruce is teaching," Ali explained to Dundee, "is that there's always more to learn. I'm the heavyweight champion. I'm the best boxer in the world. But that don't mean I'm the best fighter in the world. There's a difference." One afternoon, after a particularly intense training session, The two men sat outside the gym, drinking water and catching their breath. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Can I tell you something?" Ollie said. "When you first walked into my office and asked that question, part of me wanted to laugh. Wanted to say, 'Little brother, I'd destroy you.' But then you show me something I hadn't seen before. You show me that the game I'm the best at is still just a game. And games can change." Bruce Lee nodded. "And you show me something too. I came in thinking about this as a purely technical question. Could my techniques overcome your size and power? But watching you fight, watching how you think about combat, it's not just about techniques. It's about will. Heart. The ability to keep fighting when everything says you should quit. You have that at a level I've rarely seen. In a real fight, that matters as much as any technique." "So who would win?" Ollie asked with a slight smile. "Really?" Lee smiled back. "Honestly, I don't know. And I don't think anyone could know without it actually happening. There are too many variables. My techniques against your size and heart. My speed against your power. My adaptability against your experience. On any given day, under any given circumstances, either of us could win." "That's the best answer you've given me," Ollie said. "Because it's honest. Not cocky. Not humble. Just honest. That's what a real warrior does," Lee said. "He doesn't overestimate his abilities, but he doesn't underestimate them either. He trains, he prepares, and then he adapts to whatever reality presents." The meeting between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee lasted only a few hours that first day, but its impact rippled through both men's lives. Ali began incorporating elements of what Lee had taught him, not in his boxing, but in his understanding of combat and conflict. He started thinking more deeply about adaptation, about how to succeed when the rules change. In his later fights, particularly leading up to the Rumble in the Jungle, Ali demonstrated a new level of tactical flexibility. Against George Foreman, he employed the rope-a-dope strategy, a radical departure from his usual style, showing that he could adapt his approach to the specific challenge in front of him. Some who were close to Ali believed that his time with Bruce Lee had planted seeds that grew into that strategic creativity. For Bruce Lee, the meeting reinforced his belief that martial arts wasn't about proving one style superior to another. It was about continuous learning, about respecting all approaches to combat while remaining committed to finding the most effective solutions for any situation. He often spoke about Ali in his later training sessions, using the champion as an example of someone who had achieved mastery in one domain while remaining open to learning about others. Tragically, Bruce Lee died just a few months after that meeting, in July 1973, at the age of 32. When Ali heard the news, he was devastated. He'd planned to see Lee again, to continue their training sessions, to deepen their friendship. "We only got started," Ali told Angelo Dundee, his voice heavy with sadness. "I wanted to learn more from him. He made me see things I'd never seen before. He made me question things I thought I knew for sure. That's what a real teacher does." Years later, when Ali was asked about Bruce Lee, he said, "Bruce was one of the most incredible men I ever met. People ask me if he could have beaten me. I tell them, in a boxing ring, no. But in a real fight, with no rules, I don't know. And I respect him enough to say I don't know. Because he taught me that there's always more to learn, always more to understand." He was the real deal. The question of who would have won in a real fight between Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee remains one of the great what-ifs in combat sports history. Fans and experts have debated it for decades, and they'll likely continue to debate it for decades more. But perhaps the real answer isn't about who would have won. The real answer is in what happened during those 10 minutes of silence in Ali's office. In that silence, the greatest boxer in the world confronted a truth he'd never had to face before: that his mastery, as complete as it was, existed within boundaries. And when a 135-pound martial artist showed him what lay beyond those boundaries, Ali didn't react with anger or dismissiveness. He reacted with curiosity, with respect, with a desire to learn. That's what made Muhammad Ali more than just a great boxer. That's what made him a true champion. Not just the ability to win fights, but the ability to grow to adapt, to recognize that there's always more to learn, no matter how much you've already achieved. And Bruce Lee's willingness to explain his approach, to teach rather than simply challenge, revealed the depth of his own philosophy. He wasn't trying to diminish Ali's accomplishments. He was trying to expand the champion's understanding of what was possible. Two warriors, separated by styles and approaches, found common ground in mutual respect and the shared pursuit of excellence. In the end, that might be more valuable than any answer to the question of who would have won, because the real victory wasn't about one man defeating another. It was about two masters learning from each other, pushing each other to grow, and showing the world what's possible when ego takes a back seat to genuine respect and the relentless pursuit of truth. The 10 minutes of silence in that Los Angeles office wasn't Muhammad Ali being defeated or diminished. It was Muhammad Ali being smart enough, secure enough, and great enough to listen, to learn, and to recognize that true mastery includes knowing what you don't know. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson either man could teach us.